27, 2020. Narrating the war our brothers and we are facing here on the coast of Brazil. So, imagine that a lot of times the war occurs as something external, like a fight against those who betrayed me or oppressed me or some institution, some authority, external authority. And this, definitely if there is that conflict there, if you are being disrespected, used, whatever, you do need to fight back and or at least stand up for yourself in the face of that. But that in itself is not enough to reclaim your honor, to really presence a strong amount of honor in your world. If you're fighting back from a place of being a victim, it's the inner context that matters. It's the story that you're living inside of that dictates the flow of honor in your life or the lack thereof. And so you can be lashing out and fighting against, but still really have a total lack of honor in your life. And yeah, so, and you can see today a lot of men online are railing against feminism, against globalism, against different isms and the people who embody those and, that external enemy. And for sure, it's great to identify threats to yourself, your people, your self-respect, your livelihood, et cetera, et cetera. And you can feel a great amount of honor in fighting for something and against something. But to an extent, it's random. It's not guaranteed. It's, as far as honor goes, if what you're after is honor, which I would say that all men naturally ought to be, because it's that, ultra positive and powerful feedback to yourself, that you're answering the call, that you're doing what's necessary, that you're standing for what's important to you and who's important to you. And so it's much easier to face the world and face yourself, face your brothers, face the enemy, when you have this, almost like this shield of honor and this inner strength that is very much what it feels like, this peace, like you're not divided against yourself, and you're kind of insulated from those who would judge you or disrespect you. And it's very much that calm, powerful sense of, I'm on the path, I'm on my path, and nothing shall stand in my way. Yeah. Very much like a spiritual feeling. And I think what many people would call a spiritual feeling. So the war that I see that is there to face is not only whatever external battles there are, but oftentimes, more importantly, it's the inner battle. It's the inner dynamics, and it's how you fight. It's how you fight it that determines the flow of honor inside of you and in your life.
So what's the inner war?
So the inner war, I mean, examples of it are inner conflict, right? When you are divided against yourself, and it's so often has compromise become so normalized as a way of dealing with inner conflict that many men could even say, I don't have inner conflict. I'm not conflicted. It's, but the inner conflict diagram really illuminates this inner conflict, even if it just lasts for a split second or a few seconds or a few minutes, and how if you deal with it in a way of compromise, then it drains your power, drains your honor.
So what's the inner conflict? How does it look when compromise comes in?
And the inner conflict is one, the conflict also between your relationship to your experience of another person. See, there's your conflict with another person, and then there's your conflict with your experience of another person. That's another example of inner conflict that tends to lead to tremendous suffering. And so an example of inner conflict is when it occurs to you. It may not occur this as clearly as I'm going to put it, but it's as if there's two yous. For example, there's the you who yesterday committed to a new course of action. I'm not going to drink anymore, or I'm going to start running every day, or something like this. And you're really clear, and you made this commitment, or you promised you would meet someone, or whatever it is, you spoke for yourself. And then today, when you don't feel like doing it, you're divided, and it's stressful because you identify with both of those. Like, I said I'll do it, and I don't feel like it. That wouldn't necessarily be a conflict, except it's exacerbated by how we tend to learn to guide ourselves the way that external authorities guided us when we were younger. So the part of you that feels like you should do something now when you don't feel like it, that's very much like let's say the parent is telling you should do something and you don't feel like it. And some people, they develop a personality type where they want to be the good child, the good student, the good Christian, the good everything. And they respond to that should, generally quite obediently, because they want that praise. They want that, they want to be good. And then there's another personality type that's more the rebel, which is like, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. And either one of those, taking on either one of those as a default way of responding to inner conflict once we're adults, can lead to a compromise of our power and our own inner authority. So, for example, it might be more obvious with the rebel, right? Like, he says all these things that he's going to do and that are important to him, and then he rebels against it later, right? Obviously self-sabotaging. he says that his health is important and he's going to start going to the gym. The next day he doesn't feel like it, and he's rebelling against that voice that's telling him he should go to the gym. He's rebelling against himself. The one that's more obedient, that's like, I said I would do this and I do it. I think the compromise in this type oftentimes can be more that his values might not be his own, because he might have just adopted his parents' values or external, society's values or whatever, because he wanted to be good. So he might be acting in line with those values, but the deeper conflict might be that they're not really his values. So that's this kind of, it's a little bit of an example of the inner conflict, but the inner conflict diagram really makes it clear. Speak to that, Hans.
Seems the compromise of the one whose opinion is bigger, because he's not following his own guidance. Well, no. Seems a bit too conceptual right now. But I do think what will resonate is that they see this going on within them. I said I'm going to do this. I said I'm going to do this, but I don't feel like it. The tension between I want to do this, but I should do this. I think that's very recognizable for everyone.
I'll give you an example of the...
I'll ask you this, because I get this with a lot of guys. I would like to, when we were talking one day, I said, I would like to, it's easy for you can have different women. I'm married and I have children, and I would like to have a lover, but I can't because I have my wife and my children. And it seemed to me in that moment, the way he describes that, and I think it's with the inner conflict and how he deals with it, that everybody loses. He would like, he is with his wife and his children, family, because he thinks that's what he should do. But he also sees what I would really like is this something different, the lover. I think it's not right or can't do it. And everybody loses. The wife loses because he's not fully there. So the whole family loses. The lover loses because he's not there, and he loses. Whereas if he would make one choice, either way, he would win.
That's essentially it. Is the compromise doesn't tend to be a choice. It kind of just tends to be like
that's what it is.
An automatic
choice.
Yes.
Which is a choice.
It's not a powerful choice.
Yes.
And it's, in a way, it's a choice. In other words, he's going down a certain path, but he's not consciously saying, I'm giving up this for this.
Right.
He's not doing it in the way of making a stand.
It's not deliberate.
So he doesn't have honor, and he suffers. And, yeah.
And I see how it's often used, the tension between I want but I have to, as an excuse not to make a choice. It's used as, trying to stay comfortable, not having to choose.
What's an excuse?
To sketch the tension between what I want and what I should do is used as an excuse.
Like the conflict's just too big, I can't decide.
No, it's presented as if he knows what he wants, which is the lover, but he can't have it. But the reason why he thinks he can't have it is because I'm not allowed to do it. So I am here with my wand, there's an external authority that limits for me to get what I want.
Yes.
And it's an excuse.
Yes.
Because he's not really choosing what he wants. He's not really clear what he wants.
He's not choosing one way or the other.
And he's not going after this.
Yeah.
I say this because I've seen this presentation to me so often and it ticks me off.
Yeah.
And it's ultimately a lack of taking responsibility.
Yeah.
Making a choice.
Yeah. If we diagram this out in the inner conflict diagram, he would be choosing to not have the lover to avoid whatever guilt he might face about doing that. And then to also give up on that thing that he wants, he makes it okay by saying, I can't, or whatever the verbal narration is. But then he's also, over time, he develops a position, which is what your conclusions about what's true and what's not. And it might be verbal, it might not be verbal. But in this case, it would be something like, I'm not allowed. I'm not powerful. I can't, this sort of thing. So it's,
yeah, I think saying that I'm not allowed, I'm not ought to, there's a moral system, is a way to deal with the shame of realizing that you're not making decisions.
Yes. And then if we talk about this as a martial art, like, we're not taught how to make choices, how to guide ourselves, how to lead ourselves in a way that preserves and grows our honor. It very much the opposite. We're told how to obey. We're told how to be loyal to the external authorities, and we're punished when we don't, and we're rewarded when we do. And we're given dogma to memorize and adopt as guidance. We're taught what we should feel about the decisions we make, and so on and so on. And so all of this obedience training, which is what it is, think about a dog, right? Maybe in its natural whatever, the dog wants to run free and it wants to go pee here and it wants to chase a female there and whatever. But it's received so much training from an external authority or authorities, a human, that if the training is effective, it'll stop listening to all its own inner guidance and it'll just do exactly what the external authority wants. That's when you have a well-trained dog, a good dog. You're a good dog. Right? So this is a major problem for men who want to lead, themselves powerfully to the outcome, the world, that create the world, the life that they want. It's a revolution that needs to happen. It's an uprising that needs to happen. It's not going to happen by just changing a little thing here or there, or reading a book or something like this. It's actually, there's major transformation that needs to take place.
It's the fight of your life.
Yes. So let me give an example this morning. Give an example of, I said another kind of, you asked what is that inner war? And I spoke a bit to it with the inner conflict. Then there's the conflict. Let's say we have a conflict with let me give an example of a girl who has a conflict with her father. And she has her narration of the story. I don't know what the actual truth is, but she's not in contact with him. She refuses to contact him. And I've seen her weep again and again and tell stories of how much she loved her dad. But now he's not there, and she won't contact him, and she won't tell him that she's hurt or that she's angry and why, and she just won't. So, this is her solution, but it's very much a compromise solution because it just has her continuing to suffer. And she may feel some measure of righteousness in it, some manner of power in it, that at least she can kind of punish him in a way by keeping him at a distance and not talking to him. And maybe feels like she's preventing more pain from happening or from him hurting her more if she opens her heart again. But it's obvious to me, she cries herself to sleep maybe most nights, and she won't face him, speak her truth, say what she really wants. And what's true also is that, yeah, she loves him. She needs him. She wants a relationship. She's angry that he did what he did, all this sort of thing. She's not, in a way, she is making a stand by choosing the path that she's chosen, but it's clearly a compromise in that she's suffering. So let me say a little bit about how I distinguish compromise. Compromise is when you do something or you make a choice that leads to less of your values. It's kind of difficult to say and just to explain in just a very short whatever, but honor tends to be about the highest value in a very practical sense, because without it, you tend to be disempowered to go for all your other values. And it's very much like courage. In fact, honor often encourages you to act boldly for your values. But so when you make a choice that drains your honor, so she, for example, she might be going for her value of vengeance, justice, peace. I don't know exactly what she would say that she's standing for. But independence, something like this. But if in that stand, she's just continuing to suffer more and more, it's an obvious compromise. Because whatever value she's getting, it's taken away her power, her honor, her self-esteem, her motivation to go on in life, her happiness. I mean, it's just so honor is, you can think about, you can rank your values. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Say you got 10 values and you put them in the order of what's most important to you. And when I say what's most important to you, a lot of people are confused. They'll say that certain things are their values, but to see what someone really values, you watch their behavior, right?
That seems like a contradiction. Because if the girl acts a certain way, you would say, and you see that she's suffering, you say she's not acting in accordance with her highest values.
Yeah, I need to clarify that. I mean, there's also like her natural values, what her values really are, but it's important to notice that what people say are their values are often not the things that are guiding them, the things that they're doing. It's important to notice that difference, but it's also important to notice there can be a difference between both of those and what someone's real values are, right? Yeah. So as a rule of thumb, if someone makes a choice and there's suffering around it, to me, it's a compromise because it's taken away their honor and it's given them suffering. And that's such a big value to just chop off to get something else. I mean, taking away your honor can destroy all your other values, you know? So, compromise and suffering go together. If you make a choice and you're suffering around it, it's a compromise. Mm-hmm. So,
when I play around with this, asking guys about compromise. What's very interesting to me is that what you said earlier, I'm so used at compromising that we don't see it.
Yes.
You gotta almost have someone else point it out.
Yeah. Yeah, because you can change your position or your beliefs about what's important to you after enough conflict and compromise. Let's say, for an example I use a lot is, I want to be fit, strong, energetic in the morning, and I want to start the day confidently and powerfully. So I'm going to start running every morning. Well, after enough battling with that and often failing to actually keep that promise to yourself, trying and starting, trying and failing, you might eventually just conclude that I'm not a morning person. I'm not a fitness buff, whatever. You just decide that. So now it's no longer a conflict waking up in the morning because you don't have that as a goal anymore. So the fact that you're getting fat and lazy and wasting half your day, it doesn't occur as a compromise, right? Because you've decided that that's not what you want. And if you're really clear and really honest with yourself, you might really want it. You might realize you really want it. But you've decided, because as a way of dealing with the conflict and your failure with winning that battle, that you don't want it.
How do you know when someone really wants it? Because what you said earlier is what you really want. How you act. So he's not acting. How do you know?
Well, it might be more clear to say that what he doesn't want is to keep failing in that battle, right? He doesn't want to continually feel powerless, guilty, whatever, that he's unable to do that. So, and that also comes back to honor, because he's losing his honor the more he fights that battle. It's like he doesn't have a way to win that conflict. And so to avoid the guilt, the stress, the pain of that, he's giving that up. And it's like, let me feel less guilt, like as if honor and guilt are on a spectrum, right? So if men had a way to preserve and grow their honor, it seems it would be easier for them to understand what their values really are and to pursue them successfully.
I think presented that way, very few guys are going to resonate with that. They're going to go, what?
Yeah, well, I'm talking more now about the insights you get from having done the inner conflict. You got to start with the inner conflict. You got to map it out because it's um, for example, let's say your government really has nefarious motives and they are making you their slave intentionally and they're telling you what to believe so that you don't feel bad about being a slave. If you go to someone who's been a good, obedient to their citizen to the government all their life, and you tell them they're a slave, and you tell them this and that, whatever, your conclusions from having really looked at what's going on, yeah, they're not going to really resonate with that. They think their government's good, they're good, a good citizen, et cetera, et cetera. You actually have to show them what's really going on for them to resonate with it. So that, I mean, the inner conflict is a tool to do that. That's why I was hesitant to just, and I don't like to do this in my work and my events. I don't like to give people my conclusions about what's going on or what should be or anything like this. I rather want them to have experience so that they learn from their experience.
What the experience guys have is that inner conflict thinking, that is very real. I want this, but I want this. How do I resolve this? I want this woman. I got this obligation. I'd like to go travel, but I gotta make money.
Yes.
That's very real and constant for guys.
Yes.
I would say.
So there's I want to make money, but I want to travel. So that occurs like an external conflict. Then they might see different possible solutions. But the inner thing about that is like their relationship to this conflict. Their relationship to this conflict is what's going to affect their honor, not what choice they make. It's not about whether they travel or whether they stay and work. It's their way of engaging with the conflict itself. And the same thing is true of the conflict with another person. So this girl who had a conflict with her dad, she doesn't need to resolve the conflict with her dad in one way or another to gain honor and to eliminate the suffering. It's not a matter of the external relationship with him as much as it's about her relationship with her experience of her father inside of herself. And this is what she avoids facing. And
that's a good insight for maybe to bring it in coaching terms also. The conflict is not between two choices you make or to what you want and what's off. It's your relationship to the conflict, the way you approach it, the way you deal with it, the way you relate to it. It's completely inside of you.
Yes.
That's interesting. That would be a way to say that to guys. It's not what you want versus what you think you should. You know, it's an inner conflict that you're having inside of you. You don't deal with it. In fact, the reason that you by putting it out there, I want this but I have to do this, is for you a way not to have to deal with that inner conflict. It's an inner conflict.
There's some really powerful tools as well for dealing with external conflicts that seem unsolvable. But there's really powerful tools that most guys also don't have access to. But that's in a different realm from honor, from the question of honor. And Dr. Ellie Goldratt, for one, he has tools that are just brilliant. But also involve logical diagrams and this sort of a thing. And he was an influence for helping me diagram these inner conflicts, right? The the inner war, so to speak.
I gotta read that book. I wrote it down.
It's not luck. Yes.
What is it then?
He has several books, but the title, It's Not Luck. So, Hans, on your coaching call yesterday with that guy, when you're engaging, to the extent that you engage with him and you're in conflict with him, it's in a way because you're seeing he's in conflict with you, right? And when you see it as, okay, he is reacting to his experience of me. This is all going on inside of him in a way, right? And if you define the problem that way, he's not reacting to you. He's reacting to his internal experience of you. For example, maybe you remind him of his father. Maybe he heard it in a way to where he feels shame, and that's what he's reacting to. It's a whole nother level of power to guide the coaching interaction, because, and then you can also see the value of generating a context of honor, right? So his experience of you is going to be completely different if what he feels from you is honor. So.
Now I have, the way you talk about it, I have less of like a very practical connection with the war that's going on for guys.
Yes.
And helping them fight the war.
Yes. It's good that you keep bringing that up. It's like what there is to do is just, let's draw some diagrams, between honor window, inner conflict diagram.
Right. That gives an example. Okay, what's going on is this. It's the conflict. This is what you're thinking about, right?
Yes.
Okay. This is what you're thinking. Okay, this is what's going on.
Yeah, it's, on the initial consultations I would do for people with the relationship conflict is, after they've told me what the problem is and what the dream is, what they would like as an outcome, and they tell me the ways they've been approaching it, then we can see how the ways they've been approaching it is having it not work. And that's when I reframe what the problem is. You think this is about resolving this conflict with this other person, right? And so you're trying to change them or change your behavior, manipulate the outcome, get what you want. But the core problem they come to see is the judgment walls. And that's a matter of how you're relating to your experience of them. The same thing is the inner conflict diagram points to the same thing. You think it's about, like, what do I do to make it so I can get up and run in the morning? In a way that is important, to have a way to resolve what you really want to do with the running or with this person you're in conflict with.
I think that's an important part that you did mention yesterday. To reframe the problem. To not only explain to them that their understanding of the problem is making things worse or is not working, but also reframe it. Reframe the problem.
Yes.
Because it's in the reframing that you can see the light and you can give immediate advice. See a way forward.
Yeah. Because basically, if you talk about the conflict with someone else, their definition of the problem is going to be he's to this, he does that, he's like this. It's all their judgments, right? And if that's the problem, then he needs to change, whatever, and then I need to maybe try to change him, or I need to leave, or I need to tell him what to do, or et cetera, et cetera. And this is actually what's making things worse.
This is where I use the "is not you, it's the system." It's a great reframe.
Yes. Yeah, and I tell them on that call that this is just the way that we've learned to deal with conflict for our very survival. And when we've had conflicts with external authority growing up.
Yeah, I think you've developed so much of it already. With like years of working in it, that when you talk about it, it seems very far away.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It seems very conceptual.
Yes.
When I've seen it work, it's the opposite.
Right.
That's a issue if you want to present it.
Yes. What I usually do is I usually present for example, the honor window.
Even then, if you say to guys, well, they agree to go through it, then no problem. But honor is not the issue to guys. That's not what they believe it is.
Right, and that's also not what I, yeah.
I'm just dragging it back if we're narrating the war.
Right. Well, but we can't keep bringing it back to that. We can keep saying it is that and keep showing and keep, not like they, it's not like they need to agree with everything or see everything like we see it or whatever. But we can also, yeah. It's an invisible enemy, so to speak, because you're dealing with what's inside of you. It's not that person out there.
I like that very much. You're not reacting to the situation, you're reacting to your experience of the situation.
Yes.
So it's all inner.
Yes.
That's great.
And your experience of it is guiding you. And your experience of it, the way that you see it, is given by what you've learned from parents or society or just your own trial and error.
And by putting it out there, you ignore looking inside. You ignore dealing with it. You think it's that person who's doing wrong, when actually there's an inner conflict, and it's your experience of what that person is doing. Here's the conflict.
Yes.
Here's also, instead of having to change that person, you can solve it by yourself.
Yes. It's powerful. It's powerful when you realize.
Scary and powerful.
Which often go together, right? If you face that fear and own the responsibility, what's available is power. If I can be the one to resolve this independent of the other person's choice. Wow. It's a path to power. Always bringing it back to yourself.
When I did the honor thing, that was the main insight for me. It's a relief for yourself. It's like unburdening yourself.
Yeah, when you realize that you don't depend on the other person or the external conflict outcome, the success of a certain situation, to have your sense of self-esteem, confidence, clarity, feel good, then it puts all the power in your hands. And yeah, it's a relief from the stress of trying to deal with a problem with an external thing you don't seem to be able to solve.
You don't have control.
Paradoxically, it gives you more power over the external situation when you have your honor, when you take the power back.
Well, yeah. That external thing becomes inconsequential.
And you become more powerful to face that when you have your honor. Yes. These are our words.